The interpretation of narratives is to some extent subjective, because everyone can experience art differently. At the same time, using literary analysis, we can still explain the most reasonable meanings that the artist meant to convey or that the audience is likely to understand. To understand themes of any work of art, however, spoilers are involved. Heavy spoilers. So consider this your spoiler warning. Death Stranding Director's Cut is a game where the narrative is not just an afterthought. The entire narrative and the gameplay all exists to convey the meaning of the themes of the game. The main game designer, director, and writer, Hideo Kojima, utilizes many symbols, motifs, and plot devices to convey numerous meaningful themes about life and death. In fact, there are so many themes that I eventually decided to separate this biblical themes video into two parts. In this video, part 1, we are going to answer the question, what does Hideo Kojima have to say through Death Stranding about the connections people have? As the name of the game, Death Stranding, would suggest, the first theme that Kojima discusses is that of people's connections to both life and death. Kojima uses the motifs of hands to represent our connection to death and the world of death. Examples include the handprints of the BTs, who are basically ghosts who have not yet passed. If you get too close to a BT, they form out of tar and they try to grab you with their hands. If you defeat the BTs, they release chiral matter in the form of chiral crystals, which take shape in the form of hands. Even chirality and chiral symmetry is about how the BTs are like the opposite hand of the living. The motif of hands is used to suggest that people are still connected to the world of death, even if the dead are not readily visible to us. Kojima also uses umbilical cords to represent connections to life. The BTs are connected to our world through their umbilical cords. If the umbilical cord is cut, they are driven back to the other side, or exorcised. Bridge babies, or BBs, are also connected to Odredex scanners through umbilical cords. They're connected to both life and death, being alive, but also connected to the world of death through their still mothers. The umbilical cords are a motif that represents their connection to the world of life. Names are also a motif used to convey the theme of connections to life and death. Many of the characters have names related to death: Die Hardman, Deadman, and Hartman. Mama has a name connected to life, being a mother. Beaches and sea life are also a motif used to convey the idea of death, even in the name of the game, Stranding, like when whales are stranded on the beach. The central plot of the game revolves around the idea of extinction and preventing the extinction of humankind. The protagonist, Sam Porter Bridges, tries to prevent the antagonist, Higgs, from bringing about the extinction. Sam then represents life, while Higgs represents death. Even after Sam defeats Higgs, he discovers that Amelie is the EE, the extinction entity, with the power to bring about the final extinction event, the last stranding. The only way to stop it is to convince her to choose to let them live, to choose life. The Bible, too, believes that choosing life is important. In the book of Deuteronomy, Moses tells the people of God to obey and choose life by loving God. I call heaven and earth to witness against you today, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore choose life, that you and your offspring may live, loving the Lord your God, obeying his voice and holding fast to him. For he is your life and the length of days, that you may dwell in the land that the Lord swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give them. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 19 and 20. In Death Stranding, though everyone is connected to both death and life, the game's message is to choose life. A second theme of Death Stranding is less obvious, but it has to do with our connections to time, past, present, and future. The motif of tar is used to represent our connections to death, like BTs, but also to other times and places. The tar represents connections to dinosaurs and prehistoric eras. Buildings from other periods sometimes rise out of the tar. The tar shows us how we are all still connected to the past. The game also discusses connections to the past in the form of Cliff's war super beach. Over and over, Sam meets Cliff and defeats him in beaches resembling different eras: World War I, World War II, and the Vietnam War. The message the game seems to want to convey is to not be hindered by the past. Sam cuts off ties with Bridges because of his guilt for his wife's death. Mama, too, continues to live in the past by keeping her connection with her baby, who is already dead and a BT.
I mean, you know she's gone. You want to live your life in the shadow of the dead?
The story implies that though connected to the past, we should live in the present, and Mama eventually lets the dead baby go. The Bible too suggests that we should live in the present rather than in the past. Brothers, I do not consider that I have made it my own, but one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead, I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. Philippians chapter 3, verses 13 to 14. The game also discusses our connections to the future. Timefall represents a loss of the present and a rapid acceleration into the future. Death Stranding also suggests that though we are connected to the future, we should not worry about the future. When the Death Stranding occurred, many people were afflicted by a condition known as dooms, where they suffer nightmares and visions about possible futures. The game suggests that those with dooms have to learn to cope with the fear of the future. When Fragile has to choose between saving South Knot City in the present or keeping her own future, she chooses to save South Knot City. She gives up her future when Higgs forces her to run through the timefall, aging rapidly. Fragile chooses not to worry about tomorrow in order to save today. The Cairo artist, too, has a story of not worrying about tomorrow. She is in love with the junk dealer, and she makes him a work of art, an hourglass made out of Cairo crystals. When Sam brings the Cairo artist to the junk dealer, she destroys the hourglass, representing the worries of the future and the ties to the past. Instead, she wants to cherish the present. In the final moments of the game, Amelie attempts to persuade Sam that perhaps it would be nice to just watch the extinction of mankind together, since it would happen no matter what. Why should the remaining time matter? But Sam suggests that living in the present is what is important, even if the future is limited. In the Bible, Jesus too tells us not to worry about the future. Therefore, do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. Matthew chapter 6, verse 34. In Death Stranding, though everyone is connected to both past and future, choosing the present is what matters. A third theme that Kojima wants to discuss is that of our connections to communities versus being individualistic, choosing unity over division. To support this theme, the motif of bridges is used throughout the game. A bridge is something that connects two separate pieces of land, and this idea is used to develop the idea of connecting communities. Bridges is the name of the logistics company helping to rebuild the USA into the United Cities of America, the UCA. The founder is Bridget Strand, again, a name reminiscent of bridges. At the end of the game, Sam's father Cliff tells him that Sam unites and builds communities, and that is better than what Cliff did as a soldier, which is divide. The motifs of the stick and the rope are also used to convey this idea. In the opening moments of the game, a quotation from Kobo Abe points out how the stick is used for protection and to keep bad things away, representing division, whereas the rope is used to secure things and keep important things close, representing unity. Throughout the game, the motif of sticks and ropes are used. Sticks are weapons, which the game does have, but sticks are for dividing. Sam focuses on using rope, tying down cargo on vehicles, or even on the floating carrier.
Stick versus rope. Gun versus strand.
When fighting Higgs in one of the most important boss fights in the game, Higgs uses a gun, a stick, whereas for Sam, the best weapon is actually a rope, a non-lethal weapon. When Sam is stuck on his own beach, the gun that Amelie gives Sam is used to track him down.
Not a weapon, but a lifeline. A stick that became a rope.
Again, emphasizing the importance of community and connection over individualism and division. This rope motif continues throughout the game, and the connections between each city are referred to as strands.
Terminals Amelie's people built in the towns and cities they passed through on their journey west are called knots.
Connection to community is also highlighted in one of the main plot arcs, to build the UCA and the Cairo network. Sam is supposed to rebuild the UCA by visiting each city and connecting it to the Cairo network, sharing information and working together. A lot of what Sam is supposed to do is convince those who like individualism, like the preppers, to join and work together, contribute to the greater community. In other words, the game wants people to choose community over disunity. In the book of Proverbs, the Bible also discusses the helpfulness of a community. Interestingly enough, the Bible also uses a rope metaphor to describe community. 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if 2 lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, 2 will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 to 12. Despite the desire for individualism and personal preferences, the game suggests that building connections into a community is important. Choose unity over disunity. The last theme I want to discuss in today's video is somewhat related to the previous theme. The game is not only about community and individualism, but also about loneliness and isolation. Despite the desire to be alone, the game suggests that people should choose connecting to others, relationships, over isolation. Mama and her twin sister Lockney were conjoined twins separated at birth who have a very special relationship. They seem to have telepathic powers across space due to their special Doom's condition. Mama was supposed to be a surrogate mother for her sister Lockney's child, but had died due to a terrorist attack. She was kept alive due to her BT daughter's connection with the birthplace and deathplace. However, this caused Lockney to feel betrayed and isolated. Eventually, Mama agrees to reconnect with Lockney in order to fix the Cupids and rebuild the chiral network, even at the cost of her life. This theme of relationship over isolation is conveyed even more in the protagonist, Sam. At the beginning of the game, Sam has chosen isolation. In his mind, he lost his adopted sister, Amelie, and he didn't know his birth parents, who he assumed abandoned him. He has cut himself off emotionally after the death of his wife and unborn daughter.
I'm not getting involved with you or anyone else ever again.
He has aphantasmophobia, and in the game this manifests not only as a fear of emotional connections, but physical touching as well. He chooses to be a porter in order to escape strong and permanent relationships, opting instead to travel from place to place. However, even in his isolation, Sam yearns for relationship. He looks for people. In fact, there is a button dedicated to yelling and looking for others. Slowly, over the course of the game, he builds a relationship with many of the members of Bridges, and especially his bridge baby, BB-28.
But somewhere along the way, I started changing. I started meeting people that made me think that maybe it wasn't all bad.
At the end of the game, when Sam has successfully rebuilt the UCA, he is invited to stay. Even with an invitation from Fragile, he rejects those relationships and tries to isolate himself again, unable to forget his pain. Despite his spirit of individualism and isolation, Sam is unable to fully give up relationships. When he is supposed to decommission BB-28, he instead decides to open the pod against UCA executive orders. He chooses to rescue BB-28 from death and instead raises BB-28 as his own child, Lou, choosing a relationship over isolation. The Bible too discusses the importance of relationship. Then the Lord God said, "It is not good that man should be alone. I will make a helper fit for him." God says that it is not good for Adam to be alone, so he makes Adam a wife, Eve, to be his companion and helper. Loneliness can be peaceful and beautiful in its own way, which the gameplay often shows. But in the end, the game encourages relationships and connections to others over isolation. Death Stranding Director's Cut is a game that has a lot of thoughts on the connections people have. It discusses our connections to life and death, connections to past, present, and future, connections to community, and personal connections to others. In each case, it encourages a certain kind of connection and conveys that through diverse motifs, powerful symbols, and beautifully told narrative themes. In fact, there are many more narrative themes that can be discussed, and if you are interested, check out part 2, my second video on biblical themes of Death Stranding. That's all I have for you in this video. Bless you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If this video blessed you in some way, please consider watching some of my other videos, subscribing, or sharing with me some of your thoughts in the comments below.